Welcome to Mac and Blue, the cutting-edge podcast for the nation's builders, merging the realms of construction with exciting advancements in technology. Join us on a thrilling journey where we delve into the dynamic world of blockchain, AI, the metaverse, virtual and augmented reality, and their transformative impact on the industry. Our engaging discussions span a wide spectrum, covering not only construction, economic development, supply chain, and market segments, but also exploring the vibrant tapestry of diversity within the construction landscape. We shed light on the intersection of local politics and its profound influence on the construction sector, while championing the remarkable contributions of women and minorities in construction. For all things Mac and Blue, head to www.macandblue.com, and don't forget to subscribe on YouTube. I'm your host, JJ Levinsky. Now let's get into it. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Mac and Blue. I'm your host, JJ Levinsky, president and co-founder of Blue Wave. Lucky enough today I have Jeff Fleetham, who's the owner of 1288 LLC, but more importantly, he's kind of a figurehead in our industry around the valley and also in our industry. He's been on a number of podcasts and all those kind of things. Before I introduce Jeff formally and get into it, I would like to take a moment to just recognize our sponsors, Red Team and Service Titan, two of the softwares that we use, and they've been very collaborative in our approach at Blue Wave and also helping Mac and Blue. So without further ado, welcome, Jeff.
Well, thank you very much for having me here, JJ. This is great fun. So and don't hold it against Mike Bontrager.
Yeah, I was going to say, we were lucky enough that Mike Bontrager introduced us. Mike's from Alston Construction, and he had been on a number of weeks ago, and he had said, you should get Jeff on. So here we are. We both drew the short straws, apparently. Now we got to arm wrestle to see who wins. Goes. So, listen, Jeff's into a number of things. Like I said, he's been on a number of podcasts. But I think why don't we just go backwards, start with a little bit about your background, because everyone wants to know a little bit about you, kind of context. And then as we ebb and flow with this conversation, I'll just keep taking you down really black holes, and then you can decide.
Excellent. And I'll probably follow blindly.
So how the hell did you get in this industry?
Well, you know, I grew up in it. My dad was a contractor, small business. In 1959, he and his partners moved to Arizona. And I was the typical child slave labor, you know.
Before all the laws.
I remember when I first saw like the automatic belt taking shingles up to a roof, I said, "Why don't we use those, Dad?"
Because you're cheaper.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I was one of those kids. Anything that a machine could do, like a backhoe, I got to do with a pickaxe and a shovel. But it was a small business, a family business, and I grew up in that. And was there until the mid-'70s when there was a crunch here. And then
wasn't there a crunch everywhere in the mid-'70s?
Yeah, mid-'70s, like 74.
When interest rates hit.
Yeah, it wasn't exact. It wasn't like it wasn't like the 2000 crash, right? Yeah. But something that happens every once in a while. And that was my background. And then I took a temporary job because I had a family. Took a temporary job. My dad had to lay me off. I had a little brother and sister. They're like 10 years younger than me. I'm married. They're still in grade school. And I took a temporary job typing orders for this company that ended up with a 20-plus year career in consumer products industry all over the country. Yeah, what? So, but I could still like hang drywall while in my own house.
But did you end up moving around the country? Did you
I
stayed
here. I got recruited out. I was here and then got recruited to California with this in that industry, and then another company in Ohio, Massachusetts, Florida, back to Ohio, and then came back here in 2000.
What you don't need to mention company names, but what specifically were the products?
Well, generally they were food type products, those type of related products, everywhere from. I worked for Hershey Foods for a while, which is a big company, and then some startups and some of those kind of, which are very interesting. So startups are very interesting, especially if you got skin in the game.
Yeah.
And I just was traveling a lot, and I just got tired of being in airports, and walked in one day and to my boss. I was a national sales manager for a small advertising firm, and said, I quit.
Wow.
I said, what are you going to do? And I said, I don't know. I'll come back to Arizona, talk to my brother, and went back into business with him in 2000.
So let's take a little tangent then. Was your dad still alive at the time?
He was still alive at that time when I came back.
Was he still a contractor?
He was still licensed. He was starting to go down the Alzheimer's path.
Okay.
It got worse and worse. And he passed away in 2006
Okay.
of Alzheimer's. Yeah.
So, sorry, but
No, that's okay.
so
That's
I come back. So you re-engage with your brother, you said?
Yeah, re-engaged with my brother and went back into business. We did drop the commercial license that we had because one of the things I always remember we hated was my dad had some TI customers. I hated that. Friday night at 6 p.m. out Monday morning, but we just hated that. So we dropped that license and we did residential renovation, and we were fortunate enough to. We did a job for this young woman, and her mother and father were very influential with with the top end interior design company, and she kept referring us, and so we went from $15 towel bars to $500 towel bars overnight. Just these couple rubes, my brother and I. So, and we did that for a while until my father died. And then that was probably kind of an epiphany for us, right? Here's a guy that we always thought just worked all the time. Mm-hmm. We'd talked a little bit before about work and career and what that all means, but and we came to a conclusion. I don't know if we really knew that was a conclusion at the time, but we came to a conclusion that we were going to be brothers longer than partners. Oh. So we split up. And I wasn't ready to retire. My little brother kind of kept going, putzing around a little bit, doing a little bit, and so that, that's how that industry, that my as far as being an active licensed contractor, that's kind of how that ended.
So how you said your father passed away in 2006, so that was almost 20 years. Almost 20 years ago.
Holy mackerel!
I know that's
wow.
So then. What happened to you as far as Jeff Fleetham that put your name kind of as being recognized around the valley?
Well, I wasn't ready to retire. I was 55.
Okay.
I was 55. And this guy that I knew said they're looking for inspectors at the Registrar of Contractors.
Okay.
I said, what the hell is that? Excuse me, what the hell is that?
No, you're fine.
Yeah.
You can swear.
What the hell is that? Because I just knew the Registrar of Contractors was a place we sent a check every 2 years, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the family been licensed since 1959, never had a complaint, so send a check.
At least publicly.
Right. Well, I mean, for any contractor to say I've never had any bumps, you do, but you fix them, right?
Yeah.
You come to a time where you go, I'd rather be happy than right, those type of things. And so I went down there and I applied for this job, and I got it. And it was in the middle.
Were you the only applicant?
No, probably. They couldn't find anybody. And
you were the only one that showed up.
The only guy that was sitting out by the front door in the morning.
Yeah.
With
in my sleeping donut, free coffee
in my sleeping bag, and I got that job, and it was in the middle. And that was in 2007 because when my dad died, we took a year to rehab the house that my mom was in so that I could live there. I was a single brother. It's a big house, so we rehabbed it, remodeled some stuff, and then I moved in there. So we took a year doing that, and then I went to work for the Registrar of Contractors.
So 2007,
January 2007 is when I started with them.
So I'm trying to just think here. I remember I was not here; I was in the Midwest, but that was still right before. There was still kind of. How were things here in the valley? Had they plateaued? Or had the bubble started to burst?
It had started, but like what happens with things that hit the registrar, there's usually a lag,
True.
Right? And so it really started to hit the registrar probably in late 2008, 2009, and
so when you first started with the ROC, were you just doing inspections or what?
Yeah, that's just what I did. I had they gave me the Arcadia neighborhood, Paradise Valley, because they tried to put you in the area that you lived.
Got it.
And I thought that was cool until I realized that that's the area that had all the attorneys that the complaints to. So I'd pull up, there'd be like 10 cars there, and there'd be like one contractor and one angry homeowner and 8 attorneys arguing with each other. And so that was always fun, but that added. But I was used to being in those kind of those situations in my previous career. I had McDonald's as a corporate account in Chicago, and everything from McDonald's corporate account in Chicago to Kimberly Yee's grandparents' state market in Old Town, selling them, like a $200 order or $1 million order someplace else. So I've been very fortunate in what's happened to me in my life all along.
So what are some of the war stories during the ROC times? Come on. Give us good and bad.
During the crash that happened, it got really kind of crazy. There were, the banks pulled money out from guys, and there would be guys they're good guys, they're good companies that, all of a sudden there was no, they have a building halfway built, they had the sticks up, and then the bank takes some money, and there'd be people that were, they would just call and go, look, I got to give up my license. The recovery fund's got to take it. There's nothing else I can do. And to see those good people that happened to them, that was hard. Knowing the way that my father...
Because you probably knew a lot of them, too.
Well, some of those, but also knowing the industry, being a small business with my father,
You had empathy.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Yeah.
And, some of my first jobs with him were like pulling nails out of 2x4, straightening the nails and piling them in piles of 8 penny and 16 penny so they could be reused.
Hey, Jeff,
because I was
go out in the truck and get the board stretcher.
Oh, God. So anyway. But those were harsh.
Yeah.
Those were harsh. And at that time, complaints started coming in, and, I think we were probably running around 12, 13, maybe even 15,000 complaints a year in Arizona. And I would have inspectors would go to hearings at the Office of Administrative Hearings. So we'd have like maybe 5-6 hearings a week on top of this other stuff.
Which I can't imagine that was very fun.
No, it's not.
Because, you guys are wired. I've met hundreds of inspectors. They love being out in the field.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that's one of the things that's kind of a misconception about what they do. It's at the time, these guys, and I wasn't necessary for me, but a lot of these guys had like families and stuff, and they were paying them nothing.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Excuse
it's
yourself.
because you got a guy that's got to be construction generalist expert, right? A expert witness, right? And a mediator between people whose heads are ready to explode. And I've left job sites where guys start fighting, things like that, and anyway, I can't explain all of them, but it was that was harsh times there. The longer I was at the Registrar, I'm a private sector guy. I had been a member of National Federation of Independent Business in their leadership pack and stuff for a while, but the more that I became involved with the Registrar and the more I became experienced and allowed to do some additional things, I started getting the sense that the agency itself had a culture that was thought contractors, if you had a line, on one side would be good people, the other side would be bad people. All contractors were bad people, just because they were contractors. And then non-contractors were just a pain, right? And I grew up in, even, with my dad and everything, we've got customers, we take care of our customers. It's a customer service business, right? We might be building your house, but it's a customer service business.
Absolutely.
But none of that was happening there. And it got to a point where some things had happened. I won't go to any of them, and I walked in and resigned. I said, I can't put my name on these letters anymore.
Do you remember what year that was?
Yeah, September 2013.
What time?
8:05 a.m. No. And I resigned, and the comment was, well, these aren't your letters. And I said, it's my signature. It's my signature. I grew up here. There's a lot of people I know. Some will say they know me. Some will say they don't. But, this is my home.
Right.
And I couldn't put my name on some of that stuff. And so
what were the rewarding parts of those years?
Well, what was really great stuff is when you might get something where somebody was in.
There comes a time when dreams become a reality, when you see your vision materialize into a true work of art. And the only way to get there is to choose a general contractor who shares that same vision and knows how to bring it to life. At Blue Wave, we aren't so big that we've forgotten where we've come from, and we aren't so small that we can't care for your projects regardless of their size. When your vision deserves safety, perfection, timeliness, and expertise in order to become a reality, trust Blue Wave to get it done right the first time.
Or you get people together. It's anecdotally, there's probably 90% of the complaints that came into the registrar were just communication problems. Right?
Aren't they always?
Well, most of the time. But
well, you know what I mean.
Yeah, right.
You're right, 90%.
But not always. But when you can get people to kind of come together and go, look, you're not an idiot, and he's not a bad dude. Let's talk about where we're going here. And where people would come together, and where you could navigate them someplace, right? Help them navigate that, whatever it is, and they could all go, oh, okay. And then you get a call from somebody going, or you would get a call from a contractor or homeowner, and they would say, I didn't agree with what you did, but I think you were fair. That was when that would happen. That was just like unbelievable, because some of our stuff we used to say is if they both hate you, you've done your job. Yeah. But that's not really the case. It's if someone doesn't agree with what you say, but they say they believe you were fair. That is, you were fair and honest. That's where the win for me came. Or you find somebody that a homeowner, that's on fixed income or something that has been just ripped off royally, and you can get them. You can get the message to somebody, and then people in the industry come in and lift them up, right? Yeah. You hear this stuff. A couple of the big companies here in Arizona give people air conditioning units when they're in trouble, or fix them stuff. Those were interesting times. But as we talked before the show, my plan was never to be my lifelong plan when I was 7 was not to be an ROC inspector. Yeah. So,
what did you see a trend when you were there? You talked about. Let's be honest. Again, most people are good, but yes. There are the fly-by-nighters, the fraudulent ones that come in,
right?
That are, we know what they are. They're ambulance chasers,
right?
Did you see a cyclicality in that as with the economy? Did they go hand in hand?
Well, I don't think so.
Okay, because you hear that about back in the Midwest, you'd hear about storm chasers or things like that.
They're here.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
They're here, right? And that'll lead me into another little story about this. But I don't think it has to do with if there's more work going on, then more things, right? The rate of complaints has to do with the work, how much work's going on, right?
Fair enough.
If you got 10,000 houses being built, you're going to have X number of complaints. If you got 1,000, you're going to have X number. So that kind of thing. If there's a big storm here, then that's what happens. And
so it is synonymous.
So it has to do. It's almost event-driven, right? Or
fair enough.
That kind of thing. Now, there's certain things. For instance, during the Yarnell fire, when we lost all those young boys up there. Everybody's young to me, but
yeah,
that was a pretty horrific thing. And so I went to the leadership, said I'm heading up there, and we set up with the JIC community, the command centers up in Yarnell. The thing with Yarnell is there's only one way in and one way out, right? And so we could coordinate keeping the bad actors out, and they were there, ready and willing to pounce on people, and we were ready to stop that. We were able to stop some of that happening.
Because that was what 2013, if I remember, June,
June or July. Yeah, June,
I think it was June of 2013.
Yeah, it's coming up. The anniversary's coming up, and that was one of probably the most that experience was probably during my time at the Registrar, was probably one of the most emotionally impactful times
I can
that I've
imagine.
ever spent. Because some of those people lost everything. You know, a guy came up. We were in the command center, and I hear behind me some guy go, "Can somebody help me? This is all I have." And he had been some of his buddies had picked him up to go into Prescott for breakfast. You know, he's in his flip-flops and his shorts and his T-shirt, and he comes back, and the only thing left of his house, JJ, this fire was so hot. You know, if you've seen wood fires, was so hot there was no black char. It was just piles of snow white
ash
around. It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And that's all he had. He said, "This is all I have."
I remember being in Prescott immediately after, you know, where all the memorial stuff was.
Oh.
And we had the irony was we had just moved. That's the year that I had moved here.
Oh, okay.
And we had just been up there, and it was I'll never forget. It was riveting. I mean, you didn't see a dry eye.
It was brutal.
Yeah, everyone was. It was very emotional. I remember that.
We, you know, ROC inspectors and investigators, they have badges, but we try not to wear them because it's like a shoot me first thing, right? So you got a badge.
You didn't have your taser on you,
you don't have anything else. You got this badge. Somebody goes, boom, there's you. But I mean, I put those on, black polo shirt and the other thing in the badge, and that seemed to calm some of these bad actors down. And I can tell you, I had this young woman come up and they go, "These guys just made my dad sign this contract, and they're telling him he can't get out of it." And I looked at it, and there were a couple things that were missing on it regarding statutes. And I just went over to the company and I said, "Look, see this? I'm tearing it up. It's void." And he looked at me and I said, "You can call anybody you want. It's void." And then we got the JIC people to come over to go, "What are you doing here?" They had set up in a spot that made them look like they were part of the effort. Mm-hmm. And so we ran them off. That was pretty satisfying.
So
anyway,
you kind of segue into some things we want to go down now.
Sure.
So that exposure, you know, you'd seen the corporate world, you'd traveled, you had all these deposits in your brain and in your heart around the world, around the country or whatnot have you, and then you come back into this ROC thing. Again, knowing a little bit about your past now, it must have opened your eyes to building science, lean, all these other processes and procedures, which you know is another chapter of your life. So after you resigned from the ROC, then what were some of those opportunities and can you talk about those?
Well, what I did after I left there is I consulted, advice. The consulting thing seems so weird. I helped some people navigate some problems that they had with the ROC.
Okay.
Stay out of problems.
So that became a full-time job, or partial?
You might call it. I think my goal was to bill less than 20 hours a month. So,
but you had a reputation.
So, with some.
Well, we won't talk about if that was good or bad.
Right. So, but because of my association with the NFIB and then growing up here and knowing some of the people in the industry, I'd made some great business relationships with some legal counsel. Whether we were on one side or the other didn't matter. There were a couple of those organizations that thought that we, that I was pretty fair there, and so just touch bases there a little bit. And then at one of our NFIB meetings, there was a guy by the name of Farrell Quinlan who used to be the executive director, and he used to bring all the candidates in to speak to our meetings, and he brought in this guy, Doug Ducey, and
thought you were getting ice cream.
No. On second thought, he didn't bring ice cream. I'm going to ask him.
I'm just messing with you.
No, that's okay.
Keep going.
And we all talked to me. Well, maybe if he gets elected, he's a small business guy, and maybe he can turn the Registrar of Contractors around.
Okay, keep going.
So eventually he gets elected, and then one of my buddies calls and he goes, "Oh my God, he's got on his transition website, he's looking for a director of the Registrar of Contractors." And I go, "No way, he's got one. That just isn't the way it normally goes, right?" And so a few of us got together and we talked, and I got a buddy of mine, a couple guys in the industry that have been around, that I've known since second grade, fourth grade, that kind of thing. And then Farrell Quinlan, they said, you need to put your name in the hat. And I said, I'm just this rube. I didn't mean it like that. I mean, here's what I thought. I thought to get an appointment as a director of an agency, you had to give the governor $100,000. That's how naive I am. But it's not like that.
Okay.
And so I put my name in, and then a few weeks later, I get a call to come and talk to these couple young guys, and talk to them. A couple weeks after that, I get a call from Kirk Adams' office. Come and meet Kirk, and I go up there and we talk to him for a little while, and he stands up and offers me the job. It was like, what? Yeah, and it was that had been. Go back a little bit. My mom had passed away in March of 2014. Okay. This was in December of 2014. They made this whole process started right after I get elected, but in December I got the offer to be the director of the Registrar, and it was at an interesting time in my life, and it was shocking to me. I know my little brother and I talked, and he goes, "I wish Mom and Dad were alive," and to be offered that kind of position within an industry that is the reason why I was fed, every day. So,
so how long did that tenure last then?
A little over 8 years until February of 2023. Okay. When I was unappointed by the new governor.
Okay. So during those 8 years, what were come on.
Give it up. Okay, so there were a lot of so this process thing.
I think a lot of people want. Okay, Jeff. So you came in, you talked about change. What did you guys change?
Right. Well, you mentioned something about the process improvement. That's something that we learn along. If we're in business our whole life, we might not have the name. One of Adam Hoots is a friend of mine in Carolina. We talk about lean and about all the terms. You got to use Gemba, you got to use this. And those words are just meaningless unless you know what you're doing, right? Mm-hmm. And so my tactic there, my goal there was to change the culture of the registrar to be a customer service oriented culture. Now, it's a regulatory agency that you have to follow the regulations that are put into place by the legislature. So, however, complaint times were exceedingly long to resolve. Licensing times were weeks, months, that type of thing. So I had to come in and evaluate what was happening. So I worked with the leadership that was there until I could determine that they needed to be replaced. And so I replaced all the department heads.
Seriously?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
It's probably the hardest. It was about the hardest year and a half that I think I'd ever had. So replaced that, brought in people who probably still today are going, what the hell did I come to work with this guy for? But people that were, there's a whole lot of people on the planet that are way smarter than me. Mm-hmm. If I can convince them to come and work for me and do something that they're really good at, then I look good, right?
Well, then that's a definition that's a definition of leadership, right?
So, but I really was fortunate to bring some really great people to come to work for me, and so we systematically started to dive in and look at specific processes. So I talk a lot with my hands. So you got a product. In essence, I used to consider the license a product that the registrar have. That's one of the products. You have a license here, and you have your customer here that wants that. The idea is to remove the things in the middle of it to get them closer. And we can call those process improvements. We can call those lean improvements. We can call those a variety of different things, whatever you want to say. But one of the things I noticed when I first got there, and I'd never looked at it before, was the license application was 30 pages long. And why not? Why wasn't it 60 pages long? It's because they just hadn't added them yet. So I said, point those pages to statute. And if it's not in statute, then get rid of the page.
Oh.
And the next thing we know, the license application is 10 pages long. The license process from the time you turned in your license application until you got your license was averaging there's government days, right? And then there's human days, right? So
Probably took you 4 months just to come up with a definition of that.
So businesses operate 24/7, 365 days. Government, or even some big bureaucracies, they operate 8 to 5. Well, their doors might be open 8 to 5. So, but the culture typically isn't there to operate as a machine. Governor Ducey had given us the choice. He said, you are the CEO of your agency. And if it's right, if it's moral, and it's legal, then you can do it, right? And our goal is to run this at the speed of business, which you can kind of do, but you've got like 7.5 million customers. So, but the whole deal is to start figuring out what you've got, what in the process doesn't belong there, what's not needed,
Right.
and start pulling those things away. So when we're running into a 90-day time for you turn your license application and 90 days later you get it, maybe you get it. That's 90 days. That's 3 months that you couldn't generate income. And we turned it into, it's about a week now. It's probably less than a week. It got down to, the time frame has to do with whether or not you answer all the questions, right?
Okay.
But the closest I could get, that we could get with, was like 58 hours. 58 hours from the time the application hit until you got your license, if all your stuff was in order.
Wow.
So that means, a weekend's 48 hours, and you go, yeah, exactly. But that's included in the time frame. So, and we'd found 500 license applications in a drawer that I think that they started counting the time after they pulled it out of those drawers. So there was an attitude of, oh, what, so what, it doesn't really matter. And we turned that into people wanting to drive business, find reasons to license people versus reasons not to license people.
I think that's a key right there.
So, and then the next thing we started working on, so you got the licensing thing, the next thing we started working on was the complaint process. Complaints, whether against an unlicensed entity or a licensed entity, were someplace in between 120 and 150 days to conclude. Now, that's before it goes to the legal realm.
Oh, really?
Right? Because once it gets illegal, then you got all this other kind of statutory things. So that is, when I left, I think Chief Wills and his team had straightened up the process, trained people to down where it was about 30 days.
Pretty impressive.
Real days, not government days.
Yeah.
So, and other processes there. Another thing that we really worked on was streamlining the recovery fund process, which is nightmarish for both the complainant or the homeowner and the contractor, if that happens, to find out how that could be streamlined. That got streamlined. I'm not sure what the time frame is there.
Can you take a tangent there,
Yeah.
Jeff? I think a lot of people would have liked to know the recovery fund, the way it works.
Yes.
And then is it proprietary to Arizona or to other, how do other states compare to Arizona with the recovery fund?
Well, there's not every state has a recovery fund.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Some states have a form of something that looks similar to ours but isn't. So
Okay.
Ours is.
There comes a time when dreams become a reality. when you see your vision materialize into a true work of art. And the only way to get there is to choose a general contractor who shares that same vision and knows how to bring it to life. At Blue Wave, we aren't so big that we've forgotten where we've come from, and we aren't so small that we can't care for your projects regardless of their size. When your vision deserves safety, perfection, timeliness, and expertise in order to become a reality, trust Blue Wave to get it done right the first time.
It's a residential recovery fund. Contractors licensed in the residential, whether it be a combo license or just straight residential, pay into that fund every licensing period.
Right.
And then if there is a complaint and the contractor's found at fault and doesn't resolve it, then their license is revoked, and then the complainant then can apply to the recovery fund. And then that
nothing's
goes
guaranteed, but they can apply.
They can apply. And up to $30,000 for a residence. Now, if it's a $2,000 project, you're not going to get $30,000, much to the chagrin of some people.
Yeah.
So, and in fact, it used to be when I was with the Registrar as an investigator, the goal was to give out as much money as they could. The recovery fund management would get a bonus if they gave out more money, whether it was whatever. It was all within statute, but it was like, wait a second. So I'm going to give you $30,000 for your $2,000 patio so I can get my PIP bonus. But
sorry, I took you off on a tangent on that.
I know, I'm sorry.
Keep going. You were on a roll with. So you had talked about the streamlining the recovery fund. What else was happening?
Well, and then there was we took the approach of there was a group that would meet. They were called the Advisory Committee of Licensed Contractors. However, it wasn't all contractors. It was, and this was my opinion, and I took a lot of heat for it, but that's okay. It was people who could make it to a meeting in Maricopa County at the Capitol once a month or once every 3 months, and they were the advisors to the Registrar, supposedly, for all things construction. Well, at the time when I got there were 35,000 licensed contractors in the state of Arizona. I think we're close to 55,000 now, but statistically, 70 to 75% of licensed contractors have 5 or fewer employees. Thinking that the reason we know there's 5 or fewer is only because that was on our survey. It could have been 3 or fewer, right? So the industry speaking is small business.
It is.
Small business. And without small businesses, there would be no Pulte or no anybody else. So the only people that could come were the people that could afford to come because they had people doing their work. So we dissolved that and we started doing road trips everywhere. We went to Eager. Any place, we'd just go different places. We'd go to Eager. We'd go to Nogales. We'd go to Tucson. We'd go to Yuma. We'd go, White Mountains, Mojave County, wherever. And we'd load up. We'd load up myself, chief of licensing, chief of compliance, chief counsel, legal counsel, and we'd go. And we'd answer any questions. We'd give a little presentation, then answer questions.
So prior to that, was there a huge gap in separation from, let's call, the Phoenix Valley to the rest of the state?
Well, is there any other part of the state? Right. So, I mean, it was kind of like that. And that's the way it was thought of, I think. But there wasn't an outreach. A regulatory agency, a state government is a government of everybody.
Right, of the people.
And the regulation of licensed contractors in the state of Arizona is all licensed contractors, not just some, not the ones that can come, or not just big guys like our buddy Mike, but I love you. Like, so, but others, small guys, a lot of guys, their office is on the dashboard of their truck, right?
Right.
And so we have to reach out to them and listen to them. If they, and my whole thing was, if the agency needs to take a punch in the face, then we're going to take a punch in the face.
Yeah.
And so that was the goal, to do that, and we did that. And then
what was the result of that? Your uptick in the outreach?
I think education, really. It became, there were people that, contractors that didn't understand certain things, and they were able to get to it.
You weren't the bad guys anymore.
Well, we probably were still the bad guys.
Yeah, but like you said, would you rather, if you're encouraging them to be compliant or just be licensed, you're cutting down on so much of the riffraff.
We weren't hiding in the governor's executive tower.
Thank you.
And I think that's, I don't know if I could say that that's common, but that's the perception everywhere. Also, the perception frequently is that anybody that works for the government's a bad dude, and that's not true, right? It's just not true. Are there bad,
There's
everywhere.
good and bad everywhere.
Yeah, right, yeah. So, and so that was the goal, and I think what it did is they could see that we were there, unafraid to come. Now, we get further on into my tenure at the Registrar. We changed some other processes and worked on rules and tried to reduce burdens on contractors. We changed our process from doing policy statements to substantive policy statements. And the difference there is a policy statement is in a book someplace. A substantive policy statement is published so everybody can see it. So if you want to change it as an agency, there's people out there that haven't. Go, wait a second, here it is. So that was our goal. Our goal was the changes we made, we wanted to make them so that they were harder for somebody else to change in the future, and they would be less likely to try to change those things to the detriment of the industry and the consumer, typically.
Right.
So, we streamlined many of those underlying processes that people don't see. We went to a complete electronic portal. Worked with Salesforce, worked with MST Solutions. The Salesforce people, we all worked together and we put together a portal and a platform where a licensed guy wants to get a license today, he can do that online. Yeah. He can take his exam online. He can do all these other things online versus taking, before it was in brick and mortar, right? And so you're a guy, say you're a carpenter someplace, you want to get a license, you got to take one of your days, 20% of your work week out to go someplace to take an exam.
I think I remember when I moved here to get my license. I remember going to a brick and mortar.
Yeah, they're horrible places. And we let you get a license. Did we? You must have got one, right?
I don't know how I slipped through the cracks, but you did.
You did. You slipped through. But those were some kind of things, like why does this have to happen? Yeah. Why do you, and people were horrified. We're letting these guys take exams online. Why is that? And I go, well, there's a lot of people you can take them online. Yeah. Secondly, they're called proctor and review, so they're visiting. My thought process was this: if you're in a hole in Afghanistan serving our country, and you want to be a licensed contractor, but in your spare time you want to do that, and you're able to get back someplace where you can do that, you can take your exam while you're there, so when you land your feet on the ground back home, you're a licensed contractor. That was the goal. And we got it done.
Good.
That was not easy either.
I can't imagine.
But like I said, there were rock stars working with me. They were just awesome. But the whole process improvement thing, you kind of went there. That is, intentional improvement, visual metrics. You can read all this stuff about, you can read all these guru books about stuff, and they're all but you have to look at what you're doing. You have to look at every single step. One of my first chief counsel, Jamie Hansen. Yes, I called you out, Jamie Hansen.
It's okay.
So he we had a theory of documenting processes, and so we called it rockumentation because that's what we did. And so every process, the goal was to have every process documented. So in other words, you could pick up the licensing book. You could pick up the licensing book, JJ. If you started at page 1, by the time you got to the end, you would have issued a license and taken all the steps necessary. Now, you'd be a little slower.
Right.
But we did that with the complaint process, the recovery fund process, and that's an ongoing process. I hope it's still there. So, and if someone noticed a change, like, in the lien process, you pull the andon, everything stops, you go back to see what was broken, you fix it. You don't kick anybody's teeth in, right?
Yeah.
You fix it, and then you start it back up again, and there you go. And that was the whole goal there. The whole goal, I shouldn't say the whole goal, but I think the underlying thing for me was this phrase I use. My team probably hated me for it, but esse quam videre, which is in general means be who you are, right? Don't try to make up a story. Don't try to just be who you are, and that's what I've tried to do most of the time. I hope, but the beauty about delusion is if you believe it, it's true, right? So, but that's really, I think, the thing that ultimately makes successful business people.
Yeah.
And maybe not. I think that's the deal, right?
So what have you been doing since you've been gone from the Rock?
Well, I sold my house. I think I sold my house that my family been in for like 63 years. Tried to figure out how to downsize from a four-bedroom, 3-bath house to a 1-bedroom apartment in downtown Mesa. So I had that going on. So that took a little bit.
Did you hire a licensed contractor?
No, I didn't have to build it. I didn't have to
I
build
meant
anything.
on the downsizing. I was like,
No.
I can see Jeff remodeling while he. No, I'm just kidding.
Right. So I am a licensed contractor, but you only hire unlicensed people if you want to be cheap, right?
Yeah.
So
I'm just messing.
no,
with
you're good. You're good. So I got that done. Got rid of some stuff, and so that whole process was about a year and a half or so. So I'm kind of like right now I'm kind of going
decompression.
Yeah. I've had a few advisory consulting things and helping some people out a little bit. There probably could be some more of that in the works.
Do you get asked to do a lot of things like that?
I get two or three calls a month. Some are just, some are what happens a lot of times with the kind of the calls I get are people that just have a question. What is this? Where do I go? Or some guys trying to get, wanting to get a license, but they're nervous about it. It scares them, and I get it. Because it's been put out to be this big monster thing, and I'll help them. I'll help them with that, and if they want some more, extensive help, then we'll work something out there, or I'll give some advisory to a legal counselor or something like that. I got elected to the NARI, National Association of Remodeling Industry, Arizona Chapter Board. Got elected to the Stardust Board. I'm a grandpa.
Well, congrats.
I've got 4 grandkids. I get 3 step grandkids, so I got 7 grandkids, and I got a couple of them in the service. One in boot camp, Marine boot camp. This is the week that he's in. I think swim week was last week.
Oh,
This
yeah.
is the week where they do the log that whole thing.
Is he over at San Diego?
He's in
Okay.
San Diego. I guess if you everybody west of the Mississippi
That's
goes
correct.
to San Diego now.
Yeah, my son's still in the Marines, so
Okay,
that's why that's where he went.
And his little brother is graduating from A school in the Navy, and then next week, I guess, and then heading to Dam Neck, Virginia, and is then for another year of school, and then he'll be on the Eisenhower aircraft carrier, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So he signed a 6-year deal, and my other the other step grandkids are just working their, kind of early teens, 19, 20, 18, stuff like that. And So that's kind of it.
So let me, in the time that we have left, let me pick your brain in the change that you've seen over, let's say, the last 10 years in our space, the construction space. What are the lessons that Jeff would like to share with the audience?
Well,
either career-wise, technical-wise,
right.
anything-wise.
Okay. Well, as far as the industry goes, we in the industry need to stand up and let people know that it's not a fat thumb, dirty T-shirt, size 12 boot, size 4 hat industry. It is the construction, science, technology professions, because there's nothing about construction that's not that.
Good point.
We struggled a lot early on with the Department of Education, and they came along. Some of these kids in these CTEs and those things weren't getting credit for construction courses. They weren't getting STEM credit. And when are you crazy? Why is there Anyway, I won't go ranting and raving. So we got some of that in working, and so I promote that a lot. I haven't been, when I was the registrar, I had a platform that I could do, and that I spent a lot of time with that. The careers in construction are remarkable. You know that. Mike knows that. And you don't. And this is where I run into a little bit of disagreement with some people. You can have a wonderful career, a meaningful career, without the debt of going to university. There are statistics. I wish I could have brought them. If you take a 20-year career, we both graduate at the same time from high school. You decide to go 4 years to university for a 4-year bachelor degree, which doesn't happen anymore anyway.
No.
So 4-year bachelor degree. I decide to go to work. At the end of 20 years, I will have earned $175,000 more than you when you went to the university. One, you've only got 16 years of earning. Secondly, the average student loan debt interest rate is about $1,800 to $2,000 a year just on top of
interest.
Just on the interest. And so there's that. The thing that we let happen in our industry is we just forgot about that. And then when we run into a labor crunch, then we look to the government to fix it. And just in case you want, I worked for the government. The government ain't going to fix it. It can facilitate some things, but there's no fix there. Doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter how much money comes from Washington. Doesn't matter how much this happens. We have to let young people know that these are amazing careers, and we've got to show it to them. And when we show it to them, as leaders in the industry, we go to the school board meetings and we ask them to make sure these things happen. It's not, we don't need to teach kids how to build popsicle birdhouses, right? That's not what we need in schools. We need to teach kids how to build something, how to do something. And it's not about, you hear the school counselors sometimes, I say this, sorry about the school counselors out there if there's any, it's not that. Well, JJ needs to go to the CTE because he's not college material. It's just the opposite.
Yeah.
It's just the opposite. Send JJ to school for 6 years because he doesn't know what the heck he's doing instead of going into business, whatever business it may be. Go into some work-based learning program. If you're getting your construction management master's at ASU, instead of being in class all the time, be 1 quarter a year. I don't even know, do they do quarters anymore?
I don't think so.
But if they do, but so 1 quarter a year in the ditch. In the ditch.
Right.
With mud up to your ankles, One of these days you'll have to talk to Adam Hoots about his decision that he wasn't going to be in the ditch as a plumber, in the sewer ditch as a plumber anymore, and that changed his whole career. He wasn't going to do that anymore. And then he started to grow his career. But we tell people this story about what can happen, and we can show them what can happen. and we're proud of it, what we can do. I was in a meeting when I was the director in the governor's conference room. The governor wasn't there. And we were talking about careers, and we were talking about workforce development. And I mentioned this comment, isn't it awesome we work in an industry where we can bring our young people in, our kids into our business? And a leader of one of the largest companies in the state who was there in hope to get the government to help them with workforce said, I don't want my kids in this business. That's offensive to me.
Yeah.
I want the government to help, but I don't want my kids to do this. So I have a ballistic vest, so just in case.
No, it's all good.
So, I think that's the deal. My dad worked his fingers were flat from working them to the quick. Mm-hmm. And he did everything. He was an honest man. And I didn't find out what a great guy he was until after he died. And that happens to a few of us. And that's where we kind of get into that career in life, I was raised in a time, in the 70s, in business in the 70s, and thinking that's all it was. But career is my life. It's not my job. My job is just where I get enough money to live my life, right?
Good statement.
That's the other way around, and it's backwards. But the money pays the electric bill, right? Yeah. I don't mean like, but it's the careers of life. I made some brutal mistakes as a young man.
Didn't we all?
With my family and things like that, and wasn't around when my kids were growing up, and I have all these friends that were there, and I had this other thing. I got to do this, I got to be this, big hot shot business dude, and but the point is, all I needed to be was be who I was, right? That's all, and whether happy, sad, mad, or glad, whatever. So,
what do you do for fun now?
Well, I
other than wear your flak jacket. In public.
Well, like I said, I'm kind of settling in to see really exactly what I want to do. Like, I haven't golfed since I used to golf. I'm a crappy golfer, but I used to golf like 3 times a week. I lived at like 44th Street in Osborne, in that neighborhood, and I would get up at like 5 o'clock in the morning. I'd head over to Encano Golf Course, walk the back 9, come home, shower, be ready for work, and gone by 8 o'clock. And then I get this awesome job appointed by the governor, and I hadn't golfed since. So
you've been deprived.
So I like golf, and I got my golf clubs back out. I do some shooting stuff. I like to do road trips. I'll be at my desk and I'll go, I don't have anything scheduled for the next 3 days. Throw some stuff in a bag. That's a nice thing about not having a big house anymore. Yeah. And just go, where do I want to go?
Nice.
I lived here my whole life, but I'd never been to Kartner's Cavern.
Oh, really?
And so a few weeks ago, I just went. I called him and go, you got any rooms? Yep. Boom. Went down there. The same thing. That I'm doing a few other things. I'm just going. That sounds cool. I'm going to go do that. Or that sound. I scheduled a Mississippi River cruise. I've never been on a cruise before, so I didn't go out to the big ocean, but I'm doing a Mississippi River cruise.
You're having fun.
So yeah, that's
good for you.
Kind of thing. And then and then helping people if they need some help, navigating some of this stuff.
What
I do.
What is the this is your time to do a little plug here. So you have a legitimate business that you do the consulting, advising, but what? Can you go into a little bit, just a brief synopsis of what that really entails?
Sure. It is, if you are a contractor that is struggling with a customer that you're having a problem with, or a homeowner,
or vice versa,
right, then I will help you understand those processes.
Okay.
what you can do, what you can't do, help you navigate that, and be your advocate with the ROC if that's what you want. If I believe that you need legal counsel, I turn off the clock and say, these are a couple attorneys that I believe you should work with. I'm not going to keep the clock running while we're doing that. And then if counsel wants to engage me, then we'll do that. If you want to get a license and you're kind of worried about that, I kind of talk you through the process. If it seems to be complicated, then I'll work with you. If you want me to be your advocate with the registrar, then I'll help there. And then when it comes to process improvement, if you want me to take a look, a new pair of glasses. Sometimes we're so close we can't see anything. That one Larson cartoon where that kid, the School of the Gifted.
I think I've seen that one. Yeah.
I mean, that's what happens to us, right? We're so close we go, oh, I didn't know that, right? And so to be kind of that, let me see what you've got. Let me observe. Let me kind of hang around. And why are you doing this? Yeah. And a lot of times the answer is, I don't really know. Let's figure it out. So those kind of things, just kind of a generalist when it comes to those kind of things. And then I've got some of the board stuff that I do with Stardust and NARI and a couple other things. So, by the way, I just got my license plate for the State 48 license plate. I saw that on their website. I just ordered it.
Oh, good.
I did. I ordered it.
Mike, we got another customer.
There you go.
Yeah, Mike, they do a great job. Well, Jeff, thanks for coming on today. Thanks for kind of being an advocate in our space. And I think a lot of people. It was a good story. I'm glad I got to hear more about it, especially without patronizing you. Whether it was you, your your leadership, the team that you had put together. I will say that the portal, as a constant user of it, it was nice what you guys had transitioned into. I hope it continues to evolve and even improve more. Yeah. And like you said, let the consumer base and the contractors. We don't know what those changes will entail, but if they grow together to like you say, advocate between the two, then it's a win in my book.
I think so.
All right. If anyone needs to reach out to Jeff Fleetham, it was pretty easy to get a hold of him. He's on. Even as a young fellow like he is, he's pretty socially active on the social media channels, and available on LinkedIn. So look him up if you need anything. And thanks, my friend, for coming on today.
Well, thank you.
You've been listening to the Mac and Blue Show, brought to you by Blue Wave General Contracting. Be sure to subscribe to the Mac and Blue podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Follow JJ Levinsky on LinkedIn and Instagram. Tune in every Monday